Hi, Joel. Welcome to our second episode of podcast, CatchUp with CEOs. I'm really excited to have Joel on our platform. Joel is the CEO and co-founder of Kendal AI. So, Joel would like to know about the Kendal AI and how did you start Kendal AI and what was the vision around it. So, let's start with the introduction.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anshita, first of all, for having me on your podcast. Really excited for you, and I know what a technical sort of prowess you have. So it's very exciting to see you jump on to the content side of things. I know, and I was just like looking at your YouTube channel. I was like, oh my God, she can engineer, and she's got a gazillion followers. That's actually insane. So, really appreciate the invite. Yeah, your work in the industry is very well known. So yeah, grateful to be here. In terms of myself, my background, grew up in the UAE, grew up in Dubai. That's kind of the story, and then moved out to London for quite some time. I went to LSE, and then post that, spent a little bit of time between New York and San Francisco, where sort of I got introduced to the venture capital sort of landscape, startup landscape, and I kind of started my journey it kind of like you're doing right now, where I sort of like I would podcast with the top founders from Y Combinator. I would understand what building looks like, what fundraising looks like, hiring looks like, and that's really how I learned any of those things. I didn't really know how to do any of that before that. As I mentioned to you just before we started, I kicked off my journey when I was about I want to say 22, 21 and a half, 22, something like that. And it's been 4.5 years now of building what has become Kendal, I'd say. The Kendal that you know now, which is a real estate CRM, as well as an AI workforce for real estate teams, is what it has become. It started off as something completely different, and it took so many iterations to sort of get here. So, yeah, that's kind of the story so far. We work with some of the top brokerages in the UAE today, 50 plus brokerages. Actually, I think the number is closer to 60 now, including one of the top five brokerages in the country. I remember like literally 10 months ago, we could not support a team of more than 3 or 5 people. And today, our biggest customers have north of 150 to 200 people on board. So, really, really grateful and, excited for this next 12 months because the first 12 months was, laying the foundation and the groundwork kind of thing for what is to come. But even in the real estate industry, funnily enough, I started off with a podcast. I started off by interviewing 50 plus brokerage owners and like understanding what their pain points are, their
Okay.
life, do on the weekends, kind of a things. And then, yeah, now it's kind
Mhm.
of become what it has.
So when you were podcasting, let's say this real estate brokers or other people, so what made you, jump into real estate and altogether into prop tech CRM? Like many issues in real estate or the prop tech, but you come from a different background. How do you think about building a CRM instead of some other product?
Yeah, quite honestly, I didn't wake up thinking I was going to build a CRM. That was really not what we were doing.
Okay.
So there was about seven pivots before we ended up in the real estate CRM sort of realm. But the
Mm.
origin story of that is I was actually in the brokerage office of a gentleman called Daniel Daggers in London, and he has a Netflix show called Buying London. If you might have seen that, and
Mm-hmm.
basically while I was in his office is really when I kind of understand the depth of real estate and real estate technology. We're not talking about someone who owns like multiple homes and things like that out here. That wasn't the case for me, at least. Like, and the idea was that basically he was very charismatic and very inspiring. So I was just like, okay, let me look into this thing. And then I started talking to other brokerage owners, actually enjoyed spending time with them. And like real estate agents, whether you realize it or not, have to be some of the most interesting people in the world because of the function that they need to carry out every single day. They have to
Yeah.
say the stories, the most interesting things. So when I sort of really understood what the space sort of entailed, we started going deeper into it. We built a lead qualification assistant on WhatsApp
Yeah.
using AI for the space, and then we built a lead nurturing tool. And then we're like, okay, we're building lead qualification and nurturing. Let's do lead management, and that's when we sort of jump into the CRM space.
Yeah. Okay.
Was a bit of an uphill climb for sure, but we're there now. So yeah, that's kind of it. It wasn't like
Hmm.
it wasn't an obvious like, oh, here's the TAM of this industry. This is what we're gonna do. And it wasn't that. It was like We
Hmm.
identified a pain point, solved a pain point. They told us another pain point, solved another pain point, and then like you eventually sort of compound that offering. That's kind
Okay.
of what how Kendall came about.
I think it's very fascinating story what you can see because people just start jumping into product. But I think what you did, you understood, you like conducted maybe surveys or a podcast, you understood the problem, and then that eventually turned into a product. So that's why
Yeah,
I think we can see the success where in 10 months you have grown to 60 and which took like other CRMs years, 5 years or maybe 10 years. So I think
yeah,
that's the success we can see. One thing
yeah.
because yeah,
Sorry. I'm going to say that by the end of the year, we'll have 2000 plus agents, the
oh,
platform. And like that's a pretty
that's
crazy number to
crazy.
me. So
Yeah.
you know the volumes, you know it better than I do. But yeah.
That's crazy. I just want to understand because today's era where everyone is talking about AI, people are still struggling to know like what is AI, how to use AI. But in Kendall, you have already embedded AI into a system and people are loving it. I can see the feedback, like what people say. How do you feel about it? And was it like little challenging? Because when you introduce a CRM product to real estate who are like non-techie people, what was the challenge around it, and how did you embed this AI into this one?
Yeah, I think the thing that most people sort of mess up is they're trying to squeeze in AI into any sort of like vertical, and they're just like trying to make it work just because they want to say the word AI, right? So the first thing that we built was something along the lines of AI lead qualification, which is a simple natural language conversation that you just need to have to get budget information, like your intent, the location they're looking to move into, a few basic criteria, kind of a thing. And that's sort of where we started off. And then in terms of the voice AI piece, it was just from seeing how many of my real estate agent friends they'd literally pick up their phone and they'd voice note into their phone and say, hey, do this, hey, do that, da, da, da. And I was just like, that's so interesting, like that your whole behavior is on voice, right? Um, Now, that said, as much as I want to push this voice narrative out, you've seen guys like Ryan Serhant in New York build this out like quite well, or at least the marketing of it is really good. Simple by Sirhan. And I was just like, we don't have that for the EMEA region as a whole, so we need to build that completely. But what I realized was a lot of people are trying to build these AI agents, but they're doing it independent of the system of record, right? So the challenge is when you're just integrating into every other CRM and like you're just gonna be replaced by the next GPT sort of update, right? So for me, it was very important, and something that Drishti Harman and I, my co-founders, what we discussed was we just like, let's build this sort of system of record. Let's build the hard part first, right? And let's build a comprehensive, sticky product first. And then we'll layer the AI components on top of it. And we're so glad we did that because now we're not worried about GPT-5, GPT-6, whatever, replacing us in the next update, but rather we know that our entire technology stack gets better every time GPT gets better. So, you're kind of riding the wave of your tech gets better every time AI gets better, kind of a thing. And AI is getting better exponentially, kind of a thing. So that's really the way we view it. Build a system of record, build an ecosystem around it, and then layer AI on top of it and voice AI specifically because that is a behavior that a lot of people just embrace. I think it started off AI was more so automation than AI, and I think that's fine. Just as COVID sort of made us go from paper to digital, you're seeing the phenomenon of AI take us from very like manual processes to automated processes, which is a good thing overall. And then getting into the more agentic layers will be interesting over the next few months and years.
Let's say I'm really excited to have, see the more features coming up in your product. When I saw your product, I was really excited to know like how AI is working with CRM, like how you can embed AI into CRM. But that's really fantastic job what you guys have done. It's really interesting. My next thing is that you started your journey at very young age. At age, people are just thinking about, joining a company, what is the salary we should be getting. And at that age, you had this mindset of starting a company. Like, how did you grow into that level where people are still struggling to find a job? And then you said, okay, I'll start my own company. So, like, what was the idea? Like, what was the motivation? I would like to know more about
To be honest, I think I was just a really bad employee. Like that's probably what it
that.
was. Like, I used to work like
Okay.
part time to tech startups, doing growth for them and stuff like that. But then
Hmm.
And then 3 months I'd just be like, I'm done, like I'm moving on to the next thing. So it was really you know, just kind of who I was within, like since
Hmm.
university, literally second year of university onwards, I've been building different things. So it's not really like I started my journey when I was like 19, really, like where I'm just like building different concepts, mostly in the nonprofit sort of realm to begin with, in the education space. And then sort of somehow ended up in the fashion space, and then sort of ended up in a consultancy sort of situation where we built a 210-person consultancy, which is really cool, backed by Microsoft and Dheeraj Mukherjee from Shazam. So that was awesome. And then eventually branched out into fintech, and then like, so on crypto, and now prop tech kind of a thing. So really like the idea that there is a problem, and that problem can be solved by me somehow, delusionally so, was something that I felt very, very early on. And luckily for me, I've found co-founders that are willing to sort of, come along for that journey, and like, be comfortable with all of the change that we underwent. So yeah, that's kind of like, honestly, there's no method to the madness kind of a thing. It was just what was meant for me, I think. I just
Hmm.
kept doing thing after thing after thing, and not because there was,
Hmm.
I believe that every idea that I built, literally every idea that I built was going to
Hmm.
be the next, right? Like somehow I thought that, oh, like a user generated content machine is going to become a $1 billion company, a creator
Okay.
bank become a $1 billion company. So it was just like you just kind of assume that all of these things are, you never, like, that's how much deluded confidence you almost need in yourself to be like, okay, I'm going to do this. And the salary part, probably should have thought about that a long time ago. It's not so great being a startup founder in that context, at least not in the early days. So yeah, oh well, it is what it is.
So how are you feeling about it? You think it was the right decision? Or you like when you look at, I'm not sure, like maybe your friends or other people or your classmates, schoolmates, and who are doing jobs, what do you think? Like you are at a better place, or maybe working employee was a better choice?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I have no regrets, to be very honest with you. I
Mm,
think like learning and
mm,
proximity to people that make important decisions is really cool, a really cool thing
mm,
to have. And I've met from, your sheikhs of the world all the way through to the CEOs and CTOs of publicly listed companies around the
yeah.
world, all the way through to actors and singers and all these kind of like, so you've
Mm,
met the whole like, whereas if I was working a job
mm,
at a big tech company or a big finance company, I know what the meaning of a discounted cash flow is, what a leverage buyout is, but I might not actually know uh, the guy that you call when you want the most exclusive like suit in the world, or when the person you call when you need a, I don't know, jet last minute, like, to go somewhere. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you get the point, right? Like as people that have a guy for everything, like you
yeah.
want to be the person. And also there's this concept called
Mm,
7 degrees separation, right? Where it's like if, at any given point of time, let's say you have
mm,
7 degrees of separation from a person you want to speak to. The goal of a young person when they're like in the early parts of their career to accelerate that career should be to reduce that degree of separation. So for me, the way I look at it is like how many phone calls away is, let's say, the president of a country, or the, like the CEO of a publicly listed company. And for me, that number has gone from 7 to like 3 in most situations, kind of a thing, or like, even fewer than that. And I think that's exciting because it's always been young people, whether you look at our, like the country that we live in now, the UAE, it's the whole revolution kind of started when they were in their 30s and their 40s, kind of a thing. Like didn't happen when they were in their 90s, right? So it's like, what can you do at this point to maximize your leverage and to make the most amount of change?
yeah.
And that's
Yeah, I mean this concept of 7 degree separation, that's really good. I mean the examples which you gave, I think that's definitely going to motivate. I am motivated. I think our audience would also be motivated by listening to those kind of stuff. And it's, I think, fair to say, by you're one of the youngest CEOs in prop tech CRM because I could see other people. But I mean, you have done amazing job building Kendal AI and the product, which is tech and solving other people's problem. One thing I would like to say, because you started your journey like quite young, and like you have built a product, and now in 10 months you've grown up to 60 plus. So how was your first pitch like? Like when you onboarded your first client, it was struggling, it was difficult. What did you do like to onboard them? How did you
Yeah,
convince them?
I just said please a lot, like basically that's what. No, but to be honest,
Yeah,
I think we've had sales cycles that at that point that were months long. Like we're talking about 2, 3 months in the initial design pilot sort of phase kind of a thing, where
yeah,
just to get a design partner paying few
yeah.
$100, like it was so difficult. It took like literally 2, 3 months. And
Mm,
that too after a podcast with the CEO. And then I try and like, for three
mm,
months following up. And people have this negative view of salespeople, but
yeah,
honestly, I have so much respect for them because it's so hard to
yeah,
constantly choose and like, you leave your ego at the door pretty much, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
that versus now when we sign let's say an 80% team over 24 hours of, since pitching kind of a thing and seeing that big sort of check come in through your bank account is like very, very different. So yeah,
Mm,
that customer was probably the hardest, but like getting the first one, retaining the first one, at the same
mm,
time, not becoming a dev shop, but rather still becoming a product that can be scaled across the entire market is so, so important. And learning
yeah.
to say no is really, really important as well, because the way that they look at you when you're someone who's technologically sort of proficient is you're a genie,
Mm,
right? Like you can do
mm,
everything. I
yeah,
wish this and make this. Like that's kind of like the thinking process. So for you to be
yeah.
able to say, actually, XYZ brokerages have said that they want A, B, and C, and that's what we're building as a collective feature set first. Like, and to be able to be strong enough when you don't have that many customers to say, this is what we're doing, and this is based on needs of your agents as well as other agents in the industry. That's a tough one. So that's kind of long story on that.
It's very difficult whether you are in sales or like to get that first customer. And I think once you get that first customer, maybe you get your confidence and then you can, build on to next and next and next. But that first thing, I think it is really difficult. So how do you
Yeah,
balance?
I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
I just realized I didn't actually give your audience a tangible view of that. I started a podcast that had, well, now 50 plus episodes in, but for the
mm,
first 20 episodes, I got
yeah,
zero money for it and like nothing. And that's kind of
yeah.
what I get into a customer conversation because people love talking
Mm,
about that. I'm enjoying this so much. This is making my Saturday morning so nice because I just get to talk about myself. But the point is, like,
mm,
when people are at that level of sort of excitement and things like that, you can really be like, hey, so do you want to see this thing I'm building? Like, and that's kind of really where you want to be. And that was how the first sort of customer, it was I don't know who exactly the first one was, but one of them was the CEO of Better Homes, Rick Wayne. He came on well, former CEO, now he's chairman. And basically, he came on the podcast, and I somehow convinced him to let me meet his head of operations slash COO, Paul Stewart Smith, who was at Property Finder as well, COO at Property Finder at one point of time. And he was phenomenal. Like he grilled me so much in that first sort of meeting. It was horrible. It was brutal. I remember walking out with my head of ops, Susie, and we were just like, "Oh my God, there's so many things we don't have." But the sort of aftermath of that was them taking a bet on us and just sort of like trying our product, kind of a thing, giving us feedback, and then multiple other top tier agencies doing the same as well. So yeah, that was kind of the starting point, the first few sort of customers.
how did you feel about that? I mean, when they grilled you and then what was your
For me, it's
reaction?
like
Yeah.
I just don't know where the point of so I
Mm,
would I would just look at that situation and say, oh, if he says no, I'll go to the next guy. Right? Like that's kind of the truth of it. It's like who can I supercharge first? That's it. That's the way I look at it. I think when you're in a negotiation, you always need to think about how you are going to bring more value to the other person, right? If you're always in this sort of defense mode of, oh, this person's doing me a favor by trying my product kind of a thing, then you're probably not in a good position, to be honest, right? But if you can switch that mental framework and mental model to thinking, oh, if they use my product, they're going to be better off, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make it work for them. That's sort of the mentality that you kind of need to have. So that's the way I used to think about it. So I was never really worried if they said no, I'll go to the next person, and that was just it.
So how do you balance building powerful AI features while keeping your platform simple enough? Like I said, for the non-techie users, maybe let's say agents, brokers, like because it's you have to introduce AI feature. So how do you keep it simple?
Yeah. So CRMs historically, I mean, look at the Salesforces, et cetera, of the world are very, very
Yeah.
clunky, right?
Hmm.
And don't get me wrong, those are very powerful engines, and honestly have a lot of respect now, having built a CRM, looking at what Salesforce built like, decades ago, kind of a thing. But I just think that it's simplifying it for the use case that you're working on. The problem with broad purpose CRMs is that they're not really built for a specific target audience. They have a lot of dynamic components, but it's not really built for one set of users, right? So for us, because we know the life of a real estate agent in Dubai, let's say, we know what they need to go from point A to point Z, right? And that's really the most important thing. And when you can fit that into your product and really show them that, workflow and not make it too complex, like that's really where the value sort of added. And also going above and beyond these, like, it's not as simple as generating a lead, nurturing a lead, and then like, closing a deal. That's not it. And the tools that go into that, what we realized was more than just a simple lead management tool. It's WhatsApp. It's building no code landing pages to market your product or to market yourself, kind of a thing. It's being able to voice activate your entire CRM, so you have like, reminders constantly on tasks that you need to complete, kind of a thing. Making your CRM a bit of a productivity engine almost for yourself. And historically, what you've seen the problem is that a user will give the CRM so much data and input, but will get nothing out of it, right? Like that's the truth, which is why a lot of agents refuse to put data into the CRM. My personal goal for Kendall is that we basically make it so that the CRM gives them an exponential amount or an not so proportional amount of value back to the user, right? And disproportionately higher actually value back to the user. That's really where you have something interesting. So it's some combination of having proprietary data that is your customers, plus having that combined with the market insights that are out there, and then personalizing it for the end client, kind of a thing. That's the value of AI, right? Like it's not like mass messaging, all this kind of stuff. You should be able, but those are commoditized. What you need to have is like this personalization element. And I think that's what we're trying to be at the forefront and frontier of at any given point of time. So yeah, that's kind of the way, like we don't make the product too complex. It's pretty straightforward to use for most people. And then the voice enablement of every CRM feature that is there across the board, that's where we want to be. Today, we're not doing that. Just full disclosure, I don't want to BS anyone. It's that we were able to do it for basic sort of functionality. What we wanted to be able to do is voice note on the go, be able to pull a ton of market insight, churn out reports, kind of a thing, plug into the Dubai Land Department in the context of data and things like that, generate insights for clients, and a lot of these fun bits. So that's just a teaser of what's to come, kind of a thing on that end.
It takes really a lot of courage and I would say strong team to build such kind of product. Because there are many CRMs. That what separates Kendall AI, maybe that's AI stuff or the extra innovation which we have introduced into a product. So what are the qualities do you think or you look for when you're building a 40?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to say that the CEO role is just like,
Hmm,
I mean, like, you do sales, you do fundraising, you do hiring, all of this kind of stuff. But
hmm,
really,
hmm,
the work is being done by our engineering team, right? Like, and our design teams and all of these kind of things. I get the fun job of being in front of the customer and asking them about all of it. But now, increasingly, we take our engineers with us for those meetings as well. Our team spends about 20 hours in customer offices every single week by default, kind of a thing, so that we can learn as much feedback as possible. And to be honest, the only quality that you look for in those sort of engineering teams is velocity, right? Is speed, and like, being able to get those things out as quickly as possible, because you learn as quickly as possible by function of that. Um, and also just a sort of like I think I've seen I know when engineers are not inspired and they're doing work kind of a thing, like, and that happens a lot, right? So being able to see the tasks that might inspire them, and even though you might not be able to give them the full scope of that just yet because there's so much base functionality being built out, you still give them a glimpse of that and an opportunity to work on those things that they are passionate about. And then you'll see a spark light in them that's very contagious and it's beautiful to see as well. Some form of the willingness to work with other people is really important. Pair programming is obviously like super important, and like, we want to make sure that people are checking each other's work, and like that actually helps improve accountability, improve quality across the board. So that's also something that we see as very, very useful. So just, I think, to summarize, willingness to work together, a high velocity of, like being able to ship product quite quickly, whilst writing comprehensive sort of test cases and things like that. That's really important. And just being, able to give them opportunities to work on things that they're passionate about, and also let them experiment with new things that are out there, right? Like, I think people are so bent on the processes that they have that they don't often allow, like, different tooling for, let's say, PR reviews, or for like, just new ways of sort of coding and things like that, that previously was not like, as much as 6 months ago, it wasn't as easy to use these tools. So giving them the freedom to do that. And luckily for us, we have a mix of very experienced engineers as well as engineers that grew up, kind of like we say that kids grew up with TikTok kind of a thing. There's kids that grew up with Cursor and with Replit and with all of these other tools, right? So like how they use these tools is actually quite different from an engineer that's like 20 years of experience kind of a thing. So very interesting to see the mix of the both. Yeah.
I mean, it's very interesting approach where you bring your engineers to client so that they can understand the problem. Because what happened in most of the companies, there is a layer. I mean, requirement comes from product or a business, then it comes to there's a sprint planning. I mean, in the general way of handling it, if they follow agile, then it is followed to one person, followed to another person, then to a junior engineer. They work on it. There is a joke around it. What you expected and what you get. Like there's a
Yeah.
big gap. But bringing your engineers to the client office, I think that would solve a lot of problem because they can understand what is a problem at the core,
Yeah.
and
And
that
that's
bridge. Yeah.
100%, right? Like it's so important. And also like think about fulfillment. I think people think that engineers are just fulfilled by, slapping away at their laptop every day, like, for like 12, 14, 16 hours kind of a thing. But actually they're also driven by the same social human instincts that everyone else is, right? Like they want recognition for their work. They want to be able to be in front of a customer, be able to have that human interaction with them, understand the gravity of the problem kind of a thing. What does it really mean to you to solve this pain? That almost determines how much I put. And it's not the same as me going on a call and being like, hey guys, this is what they said, that being turned into some PRD and then like, whatever. Like it's not the same thing. So like you said, absolutely right, right? Just like sort of having that exposure to the client. And just think about it, right? Like you have a guy like, let's say, or let's say we have an Alessia Shaglova, you've got a Carl Alsop, and like then you've got one of my engineer guys in the room, and like they're just like talking to these CEOs of these big companies, and it's just like for them that exposure is amazing, right? Like, and they get to hear from the top people what the sort of problems actually are. And at the same time, get to build that. And then at the end of it, they know that they ship this thing and it's being used by this very influential figure in the real estate world. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a message to all the CEOs or the or other companies to adopt such kind of practice, maybe for one project and see the difference. I think it will definitely bring, a lot of difference in the current project and the product because you're reducing the gap. So I think it's really amazing. And we can see this from the success of Kendal AI, which took people maybe, long time, 5 years, 10 years, and you have done that, you've cracked that in 10 months because of maybe your strategy was also different. Like you said, you were podcasting different people, you understood the problem, and then you went on building. And the second approach, bringing your engineers to client, that I think that's really fantastic idea. I think other companies should get a message from you and should start considering about this one. It's really amazing.
Absolutely. I think everyone should.
Yeah,
We're all human. You
yeah.
know what I'm saying? We all enjoy those interactions. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It gives us motivation. Just be real with me. What's harder, raising money, building tech, or just convincing your parents like you're not crazy for, doing a startup? So what's harder?
The convincing parents thing, don't even get me started on that. Like, I mean, that's just out of my hands. You know what I'm saying? They got to see it when they see it, kind of a thing. So we just got informed that well, Harman, Drishti, and I are going to be on College Times, and we're going to get featured for being one of the top sort of Gen Z innovators in the country, basically. And I that was kind of like what I told my parents, and they're like, "Oh, okay, college time, you get it." Like, like, great, amazing, good job. But like when I was in my early days of building, we were building something totally different and like something that they wouldn't even understand, right? So like crypto, social tokens, what even, like, no one knows. Even engineers, like there is a niche of engineers that understand what that is. So yeah, like convincing them, that's a separate story altogether. That's not like I've not worried about that for the better part of the last 7, 8 years now. I think they just been like, this guy's crazy, like let him do whatever he wants. Like, at this point, he's something's happening. Like, I guess he's making money, so it's all right. In the context of building tech, and fundraising, look, it's very difficult, right, to say which one. I think that's why you asked it as well. But to be honest, if I had to index on anything, it would be about getting customers and like getting revenue and breaking even. And, that's kind of when you have the most leverage. And then when you have leverage, going out to fundraise is actually way different from when you don't have that. Now, in the fundraising landscape today, what previously, let's say, before, let's say, $1 million ARR would help you get to a sort of Series A conversation kind of a thing. Now, when you're at $5 million ARR, that's when you start having those same sort of conversations, right? Like it just depends. And also regionally varies so much. The MENA region does not have an appetite for heavy risk-taking ability, unfortunately, at least not at the VC level. I don't see it, at least, like especially in the context of SaaS plays and things like that. You just want to see normal revenue, which I get as well. So for us, I would say if you have leverage, fundraising is easy, but to have leverage in the first place, you need to have customers and you need to have a reasonably working product, kind of, I would say. So the conversations I was having 12 months ago versus the conversation I'm having now, very different kind of a thing. So yeah, I've been in the shoe where I've like in our first ever financing round where we raised, well, $2.5 million or so. I spoke to about 155 people, and I ended up getting about 55 of them to invest into the company. That was a good ratio. There have also been periods of time when I went out to raise when we didn't know what we were doing, where I spoke to 300 people and got zero into the company as well, right? So it's a mixed bag kind of a thing. But what I've realized from that entire process and maturing as a founder as well, going from the 21, 22 kind of a thing to now sort of seeing the company grow for the last 4.5 years, is actually that, revenue solves all problems, right? Like, and that's kind of the thing you need to embody. Like everyone says it as common wisdom at the start, but you don't really believe it until you're in it. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say. It's not really a proper answer, but if I had to choose, I'd pick customers over investors any day. Yeah.
And that's insane to hear your story, like, pitching to this many people and going to them for funding. I think it's really hard, especially in MENA region, like you said. I can understand because it's not to that, it's reaching, it's developing, but it has not reached to that level. So why you choose
Yeah.
Dubai? Because you said you went to LSE, you went to New York, and there it's quite established. What made you think move to Dubai back and start here instead of starting your startup in such kind of countries like New York or in London?
As a founder, you kind of got to ask yourself what your advantages are, right? Now, a few factors that played into that decision. Dubai at the end of this year is going to be a $200 billion real estate market. That's like half the size of the UK real estate market, right? Which is an insane stat to sort of know, because the UK has got 60 million people. Dubai has 4 million people. So there's like something there in the water that we need to know is happening, and the growth is insane, right? So if you can get the market right, the timing right, and the traction right, the team right, you're setting yourself up for a great degree of success. So we've done the thing right where we've got the team right. We've got literally anytime one of those four components falls through, you can see the tangible impact on your bottom line. So if you can see that the market's doing really well, that's like one factor for sure. Where do you have an unfair advantage as a founder? So I was in the influencer space before, so I knew a lot of the top creators here, which is actually how I got to get Farooq Said on the podcast. Farooq Said is the CEO of Springfield Properties, and I got him on as like guest number 5 or 6 or something like that when I had like 200 subscribers or something along those lines. Because one of my influencer friends from back in our creator economy days, he was just like, hey, you should meet this guy. He's like, cool. He's doing some tech thing, like whatever. And then he agreed to come on the podcast, right? And then as soon as we got him, it was easy to go from that, like keep compounding. But in New York, I wouldn't really be able to say, I know X influencer who knows Y real estate agent as easily. Now, I could do it, but it'll take me longer, right? So it's like reducing, like I said earlier, the degrees of separation, reducing the amount of time it takes to get in the door and close a deal, kind of a thing. So I found that our greatest pedigree would be here in the context of the market where we have an unfair advantage. As well as in the context of team and sort of just general sort of cash flow management, right? It's not easy to run a sort of tight ship when you're in New York because it's just like so expensive and the amount of funding that you need now. Average seed rounds are just increasing massively in size in places like New York and San Francisco, just because the salaries are so much higher, right? Now, I'm not saying that we don't pay well or anything like that. It's just that we don't pay San Francisco salaries, which is like ridiculous. You know it better than me what those might look like. But the point is that really being able to run a tight ship when you're figuring things out. Like when we are successful, obviously at the likes of like Property Finder, etc., when you're at that stage of like success, you can afford to pay everyone, and you should absolutely pay everyone a ridiculous salary and things like that because you want to retain the best talent, right? Um, but when you're in that early stage of just figuring things out, you need people that can manage their lifestyle, etc., accordingly. So my team is one that stuck with me. My core team is stuck with me for well 3.5 years now. Even when we didn't know what we were doing, even when we were still figuring things out, they stuck by my side. So really having like they are a big priority for me, and a lot of them have now moved to Dubai, which is awesome. So we have some of our like, contrary to most teams having engineers and designers outside of country, we actually have quite a lot of them in country, in Dubai, kind of a thing. And especially for the senior team, I think that's really, really important. So yeah, the function of market where you have an unfair advantage, and then finally also where your team is able to have a good lifestyle, etc. Whilst also being able to build the things that they dream of. So yeah.
I think that's a fantastic decision because definitely, I mean, you get the leverage, no doubt. But again, if you see working in a developed country and working in a country which is developing and which is developing so fast, even most of the billionaires are moving to UAE. So I think that that's a very good decision which you took.
Yeah,
I think.
like we want to go to the
Hmm,
US, want
hmm,
to have
hmm,
Kendall go global. That is very much the ambition. I
hmm,
think you know me well enough to know I'm crazy enough to actually mean that.
hmm,
Because that's just the way I see it. Like Dubai, we were a tourism and oil and gas hub, and then we started becoming a bit of a business hub, and now we're becoming a tech hub, right? So if that's the case and we're building the next Silicon Valley here, whether it's for prop tech alone or whether it's for fintech and prop tech, et cetera, you've seen companies like Alan raise like 48, $50 million recently, Tabby, Tamara, et cetera. Everyone's like, on that track, and VCs are going to have a higher appetite to invest as soon as they have more liquidity and more exits under their belt. So I can see the fundamentals sort of changing to position Dubai as a starting hub for then being able to go out and like have a go-to-market in the US, in Europe. We're already seeing companies like Husky, et cetera, go out and do those things, which is super, super encouraging and exciting for the entire ecosystem. That's exactly how it should be. So yeah, that is the dream, like Dubai to the rest of the world, right? So yeah.
I wish you all the best. I hope I mean, soon you can expand to other countries. I've already expanded in US, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so we've got
Right?
design partners there already. It's just a matter of
Mm.
like meaningfully activating them, right? Like
Okay.
with
Mm.
like with a very lean team like ours, it's hard to be in
Mm.
two places at once. So what
Yeah.
we wanted perfect and win the whole market. Like in fact, it's so funny. Like 10,
Mm.
12 months ago, I was putting on
Mm.
my link post some crazy stuff on my LinkedIn where I'm like, oh,
Mm.
we're gonna be in 20 countries by the end of the year, right? Like that's what I was just yeah, like you know how people say they manifest things and things like that. Well,
Yes.
sometimes a
Yes.
bit crazy. But the point is that we decided that actually the commission structure being quite similar between the
Mm.
UAE and US is actually a
Mm.
very encouraging factor for us to replicate the business out there. And then having meaningful go-to-market teams out there would be really the sort of determining factor of how successful we become in the US. But winning our home market has become very, very important. So getting whatever 30,000 odd real estate agents in Dubai onto Kendall is a very, very big front and center agenda for me. Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to founders who are trying to simplify like the complex technology for the users? For example, if I were to start a company, so what advice you think? Let's say initially, do not focus on this; just focus on these four things, and the things which you think or you wish you would have known it earlier, or someone would have told you. So, what are those top things? I would not say like four or five. I would like to understand like what are the top things you would suggest to founders or who are planning to build a startup.
First of all, if you're starting a company, let me know. Would love to angel invest. But
Mm,
other than that, in the context of the top four things that we should consider when building, honestly, I think a lot of people get stuck in the sort of planning phase and in the not doing phase, and and as a result of that, it forever stays in their notebooks. It doesn't actually become a reality, right? The second you realize that, oh, it takes sub 30 minutes to ship a landing page, and oh it you can actually connect so many different parts of sort of infrastructure quite quickly in as much as a day, right, to just get live and do one simple thing. That's really what I would say is important. So going from really just not just planning but also like doing, right, like that's really important. So that's one. The second part I would say is just being able to prototype using the latest tools out there quite easily as well. Like I think people previously waited for a technical co-founder or a engineer kind of to come into the mix of things. And usually it's hard for non-technical people to meet technical people because they're very siloed, right? So being able to ship out a prototype and then be able to attract the right audiences and like, just demo the prototype, right? Like, so let's say I make a thing on Lovable or Replit or whatever it is. And it's a simple, let's say, 3 hour, 4 hour exercise that I do. And then I say, hey, you can book a gym session by clicking this button or whatever it is. And you get that one simple thing working and you post that out on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. Like that's where it's interesting because you've got something live out there, and then you can attract the right engineers, you can attract the right team and investors and all of this kind of stuff. Like you can, it's never been easier to build digital leverage than it is today, and that brings me to my third point, which is really prioritizing distribution before product, kind of a thing almost, because the truth is there's an abundance of products out there right now, and distribution is less commoditized, in my opinion. So it's if that's the case, then really you should be able to, build an audience for whatever it is, which is kind of like what you're doing right now. About your domain expertise or learning about the industry that you're gonna go and solve things in. I literally saw it happen for me in tech. And then I saw it happen for me in real estate. So, like, it works, right? People think that podcasts and things like that are oversaturated and all of this kind of stuff. But quite frankly, like 99% of people just consume stuff, right? And there's 1% of people making stuff. So, the more you can sort of position yourself as building that leverage, building that distribution from day one, that's really where you should be. And yeah, like I think those are mostly the fourth one is find someone or a couple of people who will literally go to war with you. Like that's kind of like what it is, right? Like you need I think there's a movement of like solo founders and things like that, where, because of all of these tools that are available, it's easier to build a company on your own. That said, I have to say it's like one of the hardest journeys that you might ever be able to sort of embark on, in the context of the degree of loneliness, the struggles that you sort of go through, the amount of rejection is insane. Like it's like really hard for the normal person to sort of handle that on their own. I'm lucky that I don't have to do that on my own, and haven't had to do that on my own for a really long time. But I think it's really important to find the right co-founders as well. And usually that doesn't come with looking at shiny resumes with fancy names on the profile. In fact, those are usually like the opposite signal for me, at least. I would much rather someone who's shown some proof of work, kind of a thing, versus someone who has like Goldman Sachs on their like resume or whatever it is. So that's kind of the way I would look at it.
Those are fair points also, because that what you're suggesting, if you're looking at experience more than, that fancy terms in the CV, or I think that's very practical thing. That's very practical to consider. And instead of just going the, following the book, you just build it by your own experience and what you
Yeah.
feel will be right for your company.
Exactly, right? Like, and I think that's so important. We give
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure you guys do as well. We have a coding assignment for basically anyone that clears the first round of interviews.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? Like that tells me all
Hmm.
I need to be honest. Like I
Yeah.
can, it doesn't matter which part of the world you live in, doesn't
Yeah.
matter which company you work for. In this one
Hmm.
assignment, we're the same as the other person. Can you do
Yeah.
better?
Do it better and explain it better, because what I've seen, some people just they just maybe they copy paste, and then in the second round they're not able to explain. So I think then there you can judge. Okay.
100%.
Okay. So any upcoming project or innovations at Kendall AI which you are particularly excited about?
Unfortunately, I can't really share too much about that. There are always cooking things. What I
Okay.
will say is that,
Hmm.
like any other smart CRM company who's
Hmm.
seeing this AI wave sort of going through,
Hmm.
we realize that it's about the ability to go vertical into prop tech, into real estate, right? The whole advantage that Kendall has over Salesforce of the world is that I can focus on getting distribution in the real estate sector alone, whether that's real estate agents, developers, or property managers, or whoever it might be. This entire industry is my focus. And because of that, I can compound quite quickly in just one domain and build a massive amount of distribution. And then figuring out how to make all of those things work together, that's really where the alpha is, as they would say. Right. So I think CRM is just like the foundation layer that we absolutely needed to sort of get going. But beyond that, there's really a lot of scope to build an ecosystem play here. And I mean, you work with Himanshu, so it was all about the ecosystem sort of plays, right? Like that's really what it's about. And I think that if you really want to accrue value and build a long-term sort of company, go beyond just small advantages on CRM and things like that. You need to build an ecosystem. And I would say AI will make that ecosystem the most sort of smooth functioning thing that you have across the landscape. So yeah, really excited to do that and then scale that globally as well. So that's what I would say is what's up for Kendall next. I'm really excited that a lot of the team
Hmm.
has moved up to Dubai as well. That's really nice to see, and it's a good feeling to have an in-person sort of environment versus previously we were all like a little bit remote.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and like being able to scale that team, like we were only six
Hmm.
people, like not
Hmm.
even as much 7 months ago. We're at
Hmm.
15 now, and we're gonna be at 20 by the end of the year for sure. So it's like it's ramping up quite significantly. And
Hmm.
yeah, we're really excited about that. So yeah.
That's amazing journey and amazing insights to hear from you. I would like to add on to my previous questions. Can a single person build a startup today, or you need like three people definitely, maybe one from design or tech? Like, what do you think? If I have to start a company today, like what are the things or what are the areas one should be focusing on day one?
Yeah, I think no one size fits all. I don't think that, I think there's people that can do it on their own. There's people that can do it with three people and so on and so forth. For me, I need at least one person, and preferably someone technical, kind of a thing, right? Like the idea is that you need to sort of cover the gaps in your skill set that with that other person, right? So if my domain is sales, my technical co-founder's domain needs to be, engineering, computer science, like this whole vertical, right? Um, what we do is very simply go into now, if we were to start again, kind of a thing, go into a real estate brokerage, speak to the decision maker and say, and bring in other decision makers as well, because they know the pain points more, I would say, where they're able to say, what is your three biggest challenges that tech should solve for you today, but it's not really solving for you. And then you pick one of those three problems, you go to work on a basic prototype for that particular problem. And ideally, you've had that conversation with five different people, and hopefully, the common set is what you've decided as a problem to solve. And yeah, that's kind of like get them paying. Like we never did anything free. Honestly, I think I've seen so many people in this market just go undercut each other like crazy, going like giving free like subscriptions and things like that. And it's a race to the bottom. I think people that don't realize that, it's just so funny to me. So being able to charge even at the pilot stage means that you value your time just as much as they're valuing your interaction with them. So that's when they actually have more skin in the game to give you feedback and things like that as well. So yeah, that's what I would say, to be honest. Like just like find one common set problem, go after it, start solving it, build a small prototype for it. If it works, then keep compounding on it. If it doesn't work, work on something else, right? Like it's a very quick and iterative process, but the core of it all is that you're doing and not just thinking and planning, kind of a thing. And 90% of people get stuck in thinking and planning. And that's the truth of it, right? They don't make it past that. So yeah.
So how does a day in the life of a CEO looks like?
Just here's the whole day. No, but what does it
Hmm.
look like?
Hmm.
We have a daily stand up, so that's nice at the top of the morning, kind of a thing.
Hmm.
Before that, if you can squeeze in some sort of physical activity, that's great. And then the rest of it is basically just client meetings. I'm still very heavily involved in the sales sort of operation that we have. So I go in wherever it's relevant. When it's a sizable sort of team, I'll go in and basically pitch alongside my director of sales. So yeah, that's kind of mostly the thing. And then obviously the end of the day, it's like a lot of admin and stuff that I really hate doing. But admin, finances, HR, kind of all of the things that you need to do. So that's what a day in the life sort of looks like. On the odd occasion, you get a fun newspaper feature, or you get flown out to some conference or something like that, which is always fun. But I try to optimize my time. Like I think the reason that we compounded so quickly was because we stayed focused and we said no to so much. Versus like just being distracted and thinking that like these conferences and things like that are actual progress, when actually it's not, right? Like spending time, in fact, you can build all the leverage that you want to build straight from your living room. Like that's the truth of it today. So it's, if you're not doing that first, and if you're not doing that well already, that's the thing, you should be doing well before you go out and do everything else. So yeah, that's day in the life, I would say. And also I check in with all of my team members. We're still small enough that I can do that, where I can give each person a call at least once in a few days and be like, hey, what's going on, how you doing, kind of a thing. Knowing what their lives actually are like beyond just their 9 to 6 or 9 to 9 in our case sometimes. And just being able to like know what's going on, because that's when a company, like when the leaders are working for you, that's like the kind of place you want to be at, because really a top tier talent can go anywhere, right? Like they can work in any company, they can do well, they can make money anywhere. So if you're not making them feel heard or seen at yours, then why should they work with you? So that's really like the way I think about it, and that's how I spend my time.
That's really interesting. No, I think your principles are really good. I mean, foundation which you're setting for Kendall AI for a company, like it's really good. And I think that's the thing with Gen Z's building a startup or other building, because I think you understand the pain points. What again,
Yeah.
like you're checking up with your engineers, or let's say with your team, or bringing your team to the customer, so making them feel valued. So these are the things which most of the companies and very big companies do not think about it. So I
Yeah.
think this is very important, and that's why they say Gen Z is shaping the future of world. And we can literally see it from Kendall AI, like what you're doing.
I don't know about
So,
the broader Gen Z, some of them
mm,
just lazy and like entitled. I guess that's also the case with most
mm,
generations have your 80
yeah,
20.
yeah,
And the goal is just to sort of,
mm,
take the
uh,
resources that we've been given and make the
mm,
most of it and really bring some value to the economies and ecosystems we contribute to. So, yeah.
So Joel, thank you so much for sharing your journey and insights today. It's really inspiring to see like how Kendall AI is helping real estate team globally and using AI. So for our audience, if anyone wants to learn more about Kendall AI, I will share the link of Kendall AI platform. Any ending message for our audience, Joel, you would like to give?
I think keep watching Anshita's podcast. I think that's the first message. And then the second one would be just do more than you say, I guess. Like that's really what I would leave you with. I think that a lot of people talk about stuff, a lot of people criticize other people for their work, but very few people actually do their own work. So if you want to bring something into the world, then that's really what you should put some degree of time and energy to. You can spend years on and saying I'm going to do it, but if the best builders I know, they put something together in the morning, in the evening they're like, do I still want to work on this? And then they keep working on it. A week later they're like, do I still want to work on this? And like constantly test that assumption and keep moving and keep putting things out. And what this is this opportunity to be on a podcast like this, and also to have the kind of momentum we've had, has taken me 4 years and a half to get to, right? It's not something that happened overnight. And we're far from being a great success story. So all I'd say is that it doesn't happen overnight. So being persistent and laying the foundations for it very early on, and trying to learn like a sponge from as many people as you possibly can is the sort of approach to take. So if you haven't already, you should be reaching out to people who are 1 or 2 steps ahead of you and learn from them. And then, very quickly, those 1 or 2 steps ahead of you will be the CEOs of publicly listed companies and things like that. And then you're just like, okay, good. Like we're in the big leagues now. So that's really all I'd say. Yeah.
Thanks, and I hope our audience enjoyed as much as I did. Thank you once again. I wish you all the best and wish Kendall AI all the best.
Thank you so much, Anshita. I really appreciate you having me on as well.
Thank you so much. If you like the podcast, please do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And if you'd like to explore more about Kendall AI, I will share the link below.